Hey all, welcome to Travelers and Code channel. Today we will talk about JavaScript fetch method to get data. So right now in the latest JavaScript we can use fetch method to request data using Ajax, and it's a client-side request to backend to get some data. So how can we use it? Let's take a look on this method. So what is this? This is a fetch function which returns a promise, and as a parameter it accepts the URL when we need to make request, and options. Options, they are optional and we can skip this. In this case we will make get request to this URL. So let's make this URL. For example, we will use Star Wars API to get this data. So let's start. So URL, it's a string, and let's make a call. So we did a call, and here in console we can see result. So result, it's a response object, it's a built-in object in browser in JavaScript, and it returns the next data. It's status, right now it's 200, it's okay, and okay, it's true. Also we have headers and we have body. Body is a readable string, it's a special format which we can use, and we have also types, type and URL. So what is important is that we didn't get data, we get some response object, but how to get data? To get data we need to call additional method, it calls json. So we need to get, so it means we need to use one additional layer for data parsing. So we need the response, we need to return response JSON. There is JSON method which returns JSON, and after that and now what we will get? Right now we will get JSON data. So here in our console we can see that we have name, it's Luke Skywalker, height, math, and some additional information. So it's a way how we can get data from some endpoint. So for using fetch, first we need to specify URL, then in the first then response we will get response object with some data, then we need to call method JSON, and then in the next promise we can get this data. So why do we need this JSON? And it might be asking why we can get JSON directly without this transformation. We need it because we can call not only JSON, we can get data in different formats. So right now we have the next formats. I will put it here. So we can get data as a text, as a JSON, as a format data, blob, and arrayBuffer. So blob is, for example, if you need to get image, and if you need to get JSON or text, you can use this specific middlewares, we can say it. The next, how can we handle errors? For example, let's take a look on this API. So we have two, then it's successful resolvers, and what will be in case we try to make a request to some URL that we haven't. So now we see that we have 404 error, and to get response we can try to use catch. So what we get? We get that it's an unexpected token, we can parse JSON. So right now it doesn't work well because we try to parse JSON and we have error. Let's try to get text, for example, and what we will get. And for get, so we can see that we have error, it's a 404, but we got this text. So we got response as a text format, and it's not what we expected because we expected error. We wanted to get it in the catch, but we got it in data. So let's take a look. Let's run it again. And here, so what do we have? we have data and we have this HTML page. So fetch handles data, handles errors in this way. Fetch always returns resolver, and in resolver we have response, and in response we can get the error or status or something like it, but we can't get to catch. In case we have 404 or 500 error, we won't go to catch section, we will go to then. So to get this information we can take a look on this response, and what we will get, we have status 404 and OK false. So if you need to handle errors, you need to check response status, and then if everything is okay, you can use this data, and or if there was some error, you need to handle this as error. So catch won't help you here. Okay, so another case, how can we use it for post request? So for example, we need to make a post request for the same URL. So for using with post request, we need to clarify the second parameter is options. So let's try it. For example, we have user, and we want to make requests. So let's do it. The first it will be URL, the second one it's object, and what we can put in this object. First of all, it's a method. So here we clarify that method should be post. We can clarify as a delete or options or get, put, but now post. And the next one, we need the pass data. So we could, there is a special properties body, and we could expect that we can pass user, but not in this case. In this case, we need to pass a JSON. We need to stringify our object to string. So we need to call JSON. So, and what's the next is important part, it's headers. We can and we need sometimes specify headers. Headers is an object. In our case, we will specify content types. It's application and UTF-8. Why do we need it? Because of when we are using JSON stringify, we send a string, and in this case, fetch will post this data as a string, and content type will be text plain. So, but in our case, we want to send JSON. We need to clarify specifically what type of data we're sending, and in our case, it will be content type JSON. So we specify all data, and then we can get a result of our response. Let's try. So we have response, and so of course we have 404 because we have now this URL. We have status false, and we have body, the same readable stream. So, but we can in this way we can use post option to send post request with fetch. So the next one, sometimes we need to send a couple requests in one time. So how can we send simultaneously a couple post request or get request with fetch? So let's try, let's comment this one. So let's imagine that we want to get data about two persons from Star Wars APIs. It's for 1 and 2. How can we do it? To implement this case, we can use promise all to get data. So let's try. So as we know, we need pass array, and here we can pass these fetch calls. And the second one, then we will get two responses. So here you can expect that you will get data, but as we remember, result of fetch is a response object. So response object, and to get this data we need to get promises. We need to resolve promises of these responses. So how can we do it? To do it, we can use async await function. So let's call it as async function, and here we will get two responses. It's user1 we'll call it user1. We need user1 json and user2. So now we parse it two responses, and right now we can use these objects. And here we have user1 and user2. We get this data. It's Luke Skywalker, and the second one, yes, here we need u2. So let's try, and yes, it's C3PO. Okay, now you know how to can make a couple of requests in one time. So another important feature what I would like to mention here is HTTP interceptors. So what is interceptor? Interceptor is a function which can be called somewhere inside middle of calling your promise. So how it looks? Let's create the first let's create interceptor for this get request for this one, for example. So let's try it. First of all, what we will get. Okay, we need return. So we have the same user, and what is the interceptor? Let's create the first interceptor. So I'll put here function implementation of interceptor, and we will talk about it. So what do we have? First of all, we reassign fetch method, fetch function with another function. It's a new function, and as parameter we put fetch, original fetch. So it's original fetch, and this function returns another function which accepts arguments of our fetch method, and in this function what we are doing, we call original fetch with these arguments using original fetch apply context and arguments, and then here we return some result, and then with some data additional. So now what do we see here? You can see that request was sent, and after that we have data. So this middleware was executed before request was, before we got some data. And let's take a look what does it mean. So we have arguments. Let's console these arguments, and you'll find out what we have. Okay, so we did this send, and as arguments we have array, and the first parameter, it was our URL string. And so what can we do here? We can change this request. For example, let's change it to this one. For example, we can do something like it 0, and we will change it to user2. It's some synthetic case, but anyway. And so as we see arguments, we received arguments. It was people1, it's for Luke Skywalker. Request was sent, and here in data we see that we got data for user2, people2, it's 3PO. Because in this middleware we updated our arguments and we changed something, and now we change it. So why do we need it? Because sometimes we need to specify headers, pass some authorization code or some tokens, and we don't want to codify it always in headers in our request. We have just one function, one place where all these headers are specified, and we want to put in one place. So in this case we can overwrite our fetch method, fetch function, and put some headers or some additional arguments, and then use this fetch function as a usual fetch function without any additional arguments as a second parameter. And that's it. It's everything what I wanted to show you, how to use the fetch method, this built-in function. And in the next video I will show you how to use Axios library to do the same calls with the same functionality. So subscribe to my channel and see you soon.